can kneel down with me. Dear God who is in heaven, we come before your throne this Sabbath day. We want to thank you for giving us this opportunity and wonderful time to study about your word. May you bless each and everyone who is going to listen to this study, and may you even bless those who could not able to understand, who could not able to attend this meeting. Be with us. May you guide me as I'm going to share what you have prepared for us today. This is a humble prayer in Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. Happy Sabbath, everyone, once again. Before I start, I want to confirm, is my board visible? Is it visible? Can you see? Can someone just confirm in the chat or by just saying it out?
Yes, can see the board. Writing's a bit unclear, but that's fine.
Oh, thank you very much, Curtis.
For me.
All right, today we are going to look at the Millerite history. But before we look into that, remember we have four main reform lines that we have. That is, we have ancient Israel, and we have modern Israel. Then ancient Israel can be categorized into two, which is the Alpha history and the Omega history. Same applies with the modern Israel, can be categorized as well into two, which is the Alpha history and the Omega history. So we are saying this is the modern Israel, that the ancient Israel that we have in yellow. Right? And we are saying ancient Israel, we have the Alpha and the Omega. Right? So for the Alpha, this is the history of Moses. And for the Omega, this is the history of the Millerites. Right? So the same pattern can also happen to the modern Israel. With modern Israel, we are saying we're also going to have the Alpha and the Omega, of which the Alpha, that is the history of the, sorry, Alpha, this is Moses, then Omega is not Millerites here. This is the history of the disciples. Right? Then with modern Israel, Alpha, that is the Millerites. Then the Omega history, that is the history of the 144,000.
Simba,
Hello?
you got a black pen? I can't see the board, what you're writing. Don't worry, you can.
What is it? What is the name of your study today, Simba?
Oh, I'll give you maybe the topic by the end of the lesson.
Oh,
but
okay.
we are focusing much on the Millerites history.
Oh, right, okay.
Thank you. All right. I was saying we have four main reform lines, which are the ancient Israel, which can be categorized into two, which is the Alpha and the Omega. The Alpha of the ancient Israel, that is the history of Moses. Then the Omega, it refers to the history of the disciples, right? Then we move on to the modern Israel. Modern Israel, we have the Alpha and the Omega as well. The Alpha history, that is the Millerites. Then the Omega, that is the history of the 144,000. So what we are saying here is, as the 144,000 here, we can draw some lessons from both these histories. Number one, number two, and number three. all these three histories, 1, 2, 3, they help us to understand what we are supposed to do is the 144,000. So in other words, we are saying the history of Moses, it can be the natural, same applies with the history of the disciples, as well as with the history of the Millerites. So today we are going to focus much on the history of the Millerites, and we are going to draw some lessons that are going to help us and which are going to enable us to understand what we are supposed to do is the 144,000. So what I have done here is we have this bigger line, which is on top. On this bigger line, we are going to look at the narrative of the great controversy. As we can see, we have 5 waymarks, where we have 1798, then the Psalm of 1844, Sunday Law, Cross of Probation, and Second Advent. So we are going to look at the great controversy narrative from there. Then we will look at the Millerites history, which is the bigger line as well. Then we are going to look at the fracture of the priest in the time of the Millerites. So we start with the great controversy narrative. Our first waymark, which is 1798. So let us go to quotation, which is in great controversy 266.3. GC 266.3. Great controversy 266.3. Right, it says the periods here mentioned 40 and 2 months and 1,203 score days are the same, are like presenting in time in which the Church of Christ was to suffer oppression from Rome. The 1260 years of papal supremacy begin in AD 538 and would therefore terminate in 1798. That time, a French army entered Rome and made the Pope a prisoner, and he died in exile. Though a new Pope was soon afterward elected, the papal hierarchy has never since been able to hold the power which it before possessed. So, as we can see from Great Controversy 266.3, it is there to help us to be able to understand our first waymark of 1798, whereby we mark 1798 as the time of the end, when we are specifically looking at the Great Controversy narrative. That is the reason why we have this quotation GCC 266.3. So we want to move on to the second waymark. We want to move on to the second waymark, which I says summer of 1844. So let us move on to Great Controversy 603.2. Those who can post the quotation on chat, can you please do it for me? 603.2. GC 603.2. Great Controversy 603.2. I'm going to be quick on the Great Controversy narrative as well as the bigger line for the Millerites. So 603. 603.2. This is 203. Six or 3.2. Right? It says, the scripture points forward to a time when the announcements of the falling of Babylon, as made by the second angel of Revelation chapter 14, verse 8, is to be repeated, with the additional mention of the corruptions which have been entering the various organizations that constitute Babylon. Since that message was first given in the summer of 1844, a terrible condition of the religious world is here described. With every rejection of truth, the minds of the people will become darker, their hearts more stubborn, until they are entrenched in an infidel hardwood. In defiance of the warnings which God has given, they will continue to trample upon one of the precepts of the Decalogue until they are led to persecute those who hold it sacred. Christ is set at naught in the contempt placed upon his word and his place, as the teaching of spiritualism are accepted by the churches. The restraint imposed upon the carnal heart is removed, and the profession of religion will become a cloak to conceal the basest iniquity. A belief in spiritual manifestations opens the door to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, and thus influence the evil angels who will be felt in the churches. So our second waymark, we are looking at the arrival of the second angel. So the first angel, we have managed to identify it on the first waymark in 1798 on Great Controversy 266.3. So our second waymark now, we are going to see the angel of Revelation chapter 14, verse 8, fallen Babylon, being fulfilled on Great Controversy 603.2. So here we mark the arrival of the second angel according to the narrative of the Great Controversy. Then here we have first angel. Then we want to move on to the third waymark, which is the Sunday law. As we all know that when we have 5 waymarks, the middle waymark becomes our Sunday law. So we want to look at Great Controversy narrative, how Ellen White puts it in her words. Let us move on to Great Controversy 499.1. 499.1, GC 499.1, and GC 611 from paragraph 1 up to paragraph 3. For the sake of time, I think we can only read Great Controversy 611, paragraph 1 to 3. Then the other one, we just leave it. Great Controversy 611. Great Controversy 611. GC 611 from paragraph 1 to 3. Yeah, you can read, Mel.
The angel who unites in the proclamation of the third angel's message is to lighten the whole earth with his glory. A work of worldwide extent and unwanted power is here foretold. The Advent movement of 1840 to 1844 was a glorious manifestation of the power of God. The first angel's message was carried to every missionary station in the world, and in some countries there was the greatest religious interest which has been witnessed in any land since the Reformation of the 16th century. But these are to be exceeded by the mighty movement under the last warning of the third angel. Paragraph 2 as well.
Yeah.
The work will be similar to that of the day of the Pentecost, as the former rain was given in the outpouring of the Holy Spirit at the opening of the gospel, to cause the upspringing of the precious seed. So the latter rain will be given at its close for the ripening of the harvest. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know the Lord. His going forth is prepared as the morning, as he shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and the former rain unto the earth. Hosea 6 verse 3. Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God. For he has given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain. and the latter rain, Joel 2, verse 23. In the last days, said the Lord, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on his name, on the name of the Lord, shall be saved. Paragraph 3. The great work of the gospel is not to close with less manifestation of the power of God than marked its opening. The prophecies which were fulfilled in the outpouring of the former rain at the opening of the gospel are again to be fulfilled in the latter rain as its close. Here are the times of the refreshing to which the Apostle Peter looked forward when he said, repent ye therefore and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, when the times of the refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord, and ye shall send Jesus.
Thank you very much. So, the third waymark, according to 611, paragraph 1 to 3, it is saying the third angel message is to lighten the whole earth, right, with the manifestation of what? Of its glory. So, the third waymark, we are seeing the message with power. That is, we are seeing here the first outpouring of the latter rain, because we are saying plowing here, early rain here, then the latter rain. So the moment we start to see the latter rain beginning, that is where we start to mark the Sunday law going onwards. Let us move on to fourth waymark, which is the close of probation. The close of probation, that is Great Controversy, chapter 13. Chapter 13. Sorry, chapter 39. Chapter 39. That is the close of probation for the Great Controversy narrative. Then second advent, we have chapter 40. So this is how Ellen White put it across the beginning of the first angel's message up until the arrival of the third angel's message until Christ comes. So this is the Great Controversy narrative. Now, we want to look at the bigger line for the history of the Millerites. I understand most of this information is a revision to all of us, but what I know is as the lesson progresses, you are going to see this is going to help us to be able to understand some of the things that we are going to look at, which are going to help us on what we are supposed to do, how we are supposed to behave, how are we supposed to approach the issues that are taking place as the student of the prophets. Now, if we look at the Millerites, the time of the end is similar to that of the Great Controversy narrative. So we still have 1798. And we can still apply the same quotation. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, it says there's going to be an increase of knowledge, and the book of Daniel is going to be unsealed. So here, this is where we start to see the book of Daniel being unsealed at the time of the end. Right? Then, second waymark. This one I can give it to the class. What is the second waymark for the line of the Millerites, which is the bigger line? It's a question to the class. Second waymark for the Millerites, the bigger line. Or I can choose
11,
from the chat.
1840.
Sorry?
August 11, 1840.
August 11. We have August 11, 1840. What happened in August 11, 1840? What happened on August 11, 1840? On 11th of August 1840, what happened? Sidri? If Sidri is not around, Tom? Tom?
What happened in August 11, 1844 was the prediction of Josiah Litch and the restraint of Islam.
Thank you very much. So here we have the restrainment of Islam.
I've just got a question with so at the top you have the second angel. Does that have any bearing on the other lines on the first line?
On the first line, second. So you're saying you're supposed to have second angel, is that okay?
No, I'm asking the question. Is that something that has bearing on the other lines?
All right. Who wants to answer before I respond?
Because I wouldn't say that that's the second angel in the Millerite history.
All right, all right. All right, for the sake of time, on the Millerite history, here we mark it as the empowerment of the first angel's message. Like what you said, Josiah Litch predicted the restrainment of Islam, which is the fourth Ottoman Empire, on the 11th of August, 1840. So here on the bigger line of the Millerites, we will see the empowerment of the first angel. Why? Because Josiah Litch used the same methodology which was used by William Miller here. Because remember, William Miller was using a day and a year principle, whereby he was studying Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, which says, unto 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. So that method which was used by William Miller to predict the second coming of Christ is the same which was used by Josiah Litch. So it becomes the empowerment of the first angel's message, which was already done by William Miller. I don't know if my answer is correct, or if you got it.
Yeah, no, I agree, but then it doesn't line up with the second angel in the first line. So I think I was just asking if the second angel is supposed to be seen at that same waymark and the rest.
All right, or anyone can respond to his question. His question is like, here we have second angel, but here it's not second, but we have empowerment of the first angel's message. Who can respond to that? If I got you correct, Tom, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's more a question for you. Just it depends on what you're intending to show. I don't know if anybody else will be able to answer what you're intending.
All right, that's fine. Let me move on. Right. So we have August 11, which is the empowerment of the first angel's message here. August 11. Then the next waymark, in fact, we can put a quotation for reference sake, right? This is GC, the 334. Just check, yeah. 334.4. Let's control verse 334.4. This way you see Ellen White talking about the restrainment of Islam. And when she also says about the prediction which was made by Josiah Litch, then we move on to the second waymark. Sorry, third waymark. Third waymark in Millerite history. What is the third waymark? This is a revision to most of us. Richard, third waymark.
I'm not with it today, Simba.
All right, it's fine. Shami? Oh, Shami cannot talk. Absalom? Third waymark? Third waymark in the Millerite history? All right.
1850.
1850. Thank you, kids. 1850. Why 1850? Someone else is not Curtis. Why 1850? Why 1850? Why 1850?
Hello, Simba.
Yes.
We 1850. We externally we mark the fugitive slave law, and we equate that to the Sunday law. And internally we mark the charts.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think, thank you very much, Ignatius. So for the meantime, if we look here, we are looking internally. Here we're also looking internally. This is the church, right? Then 1850 as well. 1850 as well. We are also supposed to look internally because the prediction which was done by Josiah Leach, this was being done by the church, right? He's making a prediction. So in 1850 as well, I think for the meantime, we can go with the chart. The 1850 chart. Because we are not looking external, we are just looking internal. Right? Melanie, I want to say something, yes?
Yeah, I understand that you're looking internally, but then the restrainment of Islam is an external event. It's a political thing that happened in the world, which makes it a political event. So even though Josiah Leach is a church person who predicted an external event. So I think 1850, my thinking, we can as well put the fugitive slave law.
All right. I'm not denying that we can put fugitive slave act or fugitive slave law, but for the meantime, since we're sticking to what was being done by the church, we are not looking at the external. We are still focusing on what was being done by the church. External events, we are going to look at them, and that is where we are going to draw much on our start. But for the meantime, we just want to look at what the church was going through. All right. So we can look at the 1850 chart. Remember, they prepared the 1843 chart, but it did not take into account the issue of Sabbath. But with the 1850 chart now, with the sanctuary message, we can see there's now what there is the issue of Sabbath in 1850. Then the next way, Mike, the fourth way, Mike. Fourth way, Mike, becomes 1861 because of time. 1861. Why 1861? Can someone just give us the reason? Then we move on to the last way, Mike, so that we'll move on. This one is, I can ask, charity or blessing. Why 1861?
The beginning of the time of trouble. The Civil War.
The beginning of the time of the trouble, which is the Civil War. All right. Someone else again? Get it? What you have said, blessing, I'm not saying it's wrong. Or we are going to do much on the external. For the meantime, internally. Get it?
Well, I was gonna say what Blessing said, but the thing that comes to mind is that the Seventh Adventist Church becomes an organized. They had principles that they believed in, and then it seems like they compromised those principles and create an organization in the Seventh Adventist Church to avoid their children going to war. And that takes place in no. Was that it? No, I retract that. Never mind, that's in 1863. As for 1861, I don't know.
All right. Ignatius?
I'm going to learn a new concept from you today.
All right. All right. So here we have 1863. So what I'm suggesting here is, I think it is emanating from that study of the 2520, whereby we had to create the 1863, so that we were saying Christ. If the Millerites were on point, Christ was supposed to come in 1863, right? Christ was supposed to come in 1863. But because of the start of the 2520, we managed to create 1863, which I think and suggest that, which could be the reason why we ended up looking at 1861. Thereby, we'll be looking at the issue when the Civil War began in America. But I think we must have something that should have happened within the church in 1861, which led to 1863, where we are saying Christ was supposed to come according to that chiastic structure that we did of the 2520. I don't know if that is clear.
Hi, Simba.
Yes.
I understand you said I'm wrong, which is okay. I accept that. But what is it that you said happened in 1861? Because you asked what happened in 1861. I understand the explanation you gave, that the 2520 helped us to identify 1863, and within that history, we expect, if 1863 is the second advent, we expect the close of probation before that. But your question had been not how do we get to identify the time of trouble, but
But
what happened in 1861?
But I didn't say you are wrong.
Okay, no, it's okay. I didn't mind. I wasn't taking offense in it. It wasn't the answer that you were looking for. So what I'm asking is, how did you then identify 1861? Because that part wasn't clear when you said what happened internally.
I was just trying to avoid to use external events. That's why Melania, when she says Fugitive Slave Act, I did not take it here. I go with 1850 charts. So I wanted to stick with that principle whereby we are just looking at what was taking place in the church. I wanted to avoid to look at the external events.
No,
so
I understand.
So when you say 1861, I didn't say it's wrong. I said, for the meantime, I just want us to stick maybe to internal events. So 1863, what I was explaining in about 1863, I was just trying to show maybe this 1861 came as a result of the start of the 2520, whereby we have two 2520s, whereby we created 1863.
Okay.
So for the meantime, even myself, I don't have the answer of 1861 internally.
No, okay.
Internally, I'm not saying the beginning of Civil War is wrong, or the enactment of 1850 the enactment of fugitive slave law in 1850 is wrong. I'm not saying that.
No. It's okay. When you said I was wrong, I didn't think you were saying the event is wrong, but that's not the answer you're looking for. So that's how I understood what you were saying. So my question was, what did you say about 1861 again? But it's okay if you sort of answered me. It's okay.
All right.
Simba.
So
carry on, Charity.
Sorry,
right.
I just want to take you back a little bit. When Melania made that comment about 1840, I was also thinking the same thing, that when you're identifying August 11, this is an event that happens externally, and the prediction happened in 1838, which was something internal. The prediction happened 1838, even though the refinement happened in 1840, about August 11 itself. But August 11 as a date itself is something that's happening externally. So I'm not sure if you understand that. You're muted. Sorry, I can't hear you.
All right, can I pose the question to the class? The Millerites, what caused them to, in fact, let me put it this way.
So
Why do we say the Millerite history is the history of failure?
Simba.
From how I understood it, from what I understand about the Millerite history being a history of failure, is because of the history of the second angel and how the work of the second angel was basically not properly done. And therefore they came to conclusions that were wrong. There's things that they missed because of the work of the second angel. So when we come to our history, which is the history of success, that's where the correction has to happen.
And I know those things, because this is where we are going to dwell much on. Those things are the ones that I'm looking for to the class. It's not directed to Church only. Those things are the ones that I'm looking for to the class, not directed to Church per se. All right, for the sake of time, I'm suggesting that the Millerite history is a history of failure because they did not look at the external events. There are external events that they did not take into account. I understand this prediction is happening to the world, but the prediction was done by someone who is in the church. But they were not looking at the external events as the history was unfolding. I don't know if that's clear.
Okay, I was just identifying that the prediction happened 1838. If we were to mark something internal, because I noticed you were threading a story of the things that happened internally. So yes, I understand the church is the one that people in the church are the ones that studied. And I was saying, if we were to mark the event of something that happened in the church or the people in the church that did it, it wouldn't be August 11, 1844. It would be a different date, if you understand what I'm saying.
So,
Simba, I guess, just along with what Charity is saying, the study done by Lich was done, as you're saying, 2 years before, maybe in defense of you, Simba. The specific date of August 11 was done in August, if that's what you want to mark, that the day identifying the 11th of August, that was a few days before August 11. I can't remember which day specifically. Just, yeah, I thought.
I think it's July of 1840.
Yeah,
when
okay, so
it-
then July.
all right, it's okay. We'll move on.
Okay, Simba, if also I may comment, the way that I'm understanding your study is you're trying to line up the activities of the church, what the church was doing internally in relation to the waymarks.
Exactly.
You see now, and we haven't gone yet to the end of your study and your conclusion. So I think we should just be, patient and try to figure out where we are going, because this is a history of failure. So it becomes particularly difficult to continue to thread the church up to 1863. That is why I think that is why I understood you when you then use the 2520 to finish up that line with marking activities of the church, because we can't have the activities of the church because the church had already failed. You see, because the church could not see the Sunday law. And the reason why the church could not see the Sunday law is because the church stopped to look externally. But in as for the Josiah Leach prediction, without going particularly on the actual date, I am not threatened by accepting that this was identified by the church, this particular waymark. So in the church, they were actually expecting the date to happen, whatever it is, if it was excitement or whatever. But in the church, at least they were doing something to do with that particular waymark, that 1840. But when you come to 1861, it's difficult now to see what the church was actually doing, because the church had stopped to look external. So that is how I have understood you. I guess there could be quotation to identify what was happening in the month, like in August. They could be there, but without the quotes, I don't need the quotation, because the way I'm understanding how you're threading your story is you're looking at what the church is doing in relation to the waymark.
Hi, Simba.
Yes, no.
Sorry, could I just give a quick comment? I guess it was prompted by what Ignatius said. I don't think people are being impatient with Simba, because the way I understand his teaching style, at least today, is that he's inviting questions and comments. He was constantly saying, is there anyone who's not clear about something? Or so-and-so, could you say something? So I wouldn't say it's an issue of impatience, but it seems to be the style that the presenter has adopted. So we're just asking based on that, so that we have that clarity on what he's saying.
Thank you. It's fine. All right. Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to dwell much maybe on this, because others are suggesting I was supposed to say 1838, because this is when the story was predicted. Yes, it's true. That is when it was predicted. But the issue is, it is the church that predicted this event. Because I was trying to see what the church was doing. 1850, they are the ones who came up with the 1850 chart. 1840, this prediction, they are the ones who came up with that prediction. It was done in 1838, but as a second waymark, we can't put 1838, because Josiah Leach predicted it, 1838, of course, yes, but it came to pass August 11, 1840. That date, they knew it as a result of someone who is in church who was studying the rules of the first angel. You see? So Great Portion of verse 334.4, it is highlighting the idea of August 11, 1840, the dismemberment of Islam. Ellen White is commenting on Revelation chapter 9, whereby cementing the prediction which was done by Josiah Leach. So let me move on to the line of the priest. This is a fracture, the first fracture that we have. I've just decided to put the dates. Right here we have 1798 as the time of the end. Then we have the dismemberment of Islam again, 1840, right? Then page waymark becomes the Sunday law. So here we are saying when the time of the end. We have the time of the end. Then we have 2001, and sorry, August 11. Then we have July 21, 1844, which is the Sunday law. Then October 22, 1844, we mark the close of probation for the first group. Then 1850 becomes the second argument for the priest. This is the way we see that the Millerite history, its line is too technical, because as we can see, 1850, it is the second advent for the first group. But at the same time, here we have 1850 on top. If we are to look now at the external events where you wanted us to look at, it is the Sunday law. So we need to be careful with 1850 1850, it can be a Sunday law. At the same time, it can also be what? Panium. Remember, this way, man, it can also be what? It can be panium. So that is how we need to be careful when we are dealing with the Millerites. Over and above all, the history of the Millerites, it is the history of the failure. What caused them to be the history of the failure? It's because they did not look at the what? At external events. So now we want to thread the external events, what they were supposed to do. What they were supposed to do. Right? If we are to put external events, now we have Fugitive Slave Act. We now have the answer blessing said, I said it's wrong, of which I did not say that, the beginning of the Civil War. Then here, 1863. 1863, what is the 1863? External. External, 1863. External. In the USA. We have what? We have National Reform Movement. Anything else in 1863? We have so many events in 1863.
The tides turn in the midpoint of the Civil War between the North and the South.
Exactly, because the Civil War, remember, ended in what? In 1865. All right. So now we are going we are trying by all means to thread. I'm going to twist my board so that I have the place. Right. So we are looking at 1798, right? In 1798, we should mark something external that took place in America, which I believe if the Millerites were able to look at that, Christ was going to come, right? But what we need to do, we have 1798. In 1798, I'm going to be specific on June 18. June 18. What happened in America, June 18, 1798? They have what they call the Alien and Sedition Acts, right? So what is it? What is this Alien and Sedition Act? So we are seeing this is the neutralization signed into law by Adam, requiring immigrants to wait 14 years rather than 5 years. So we are seeing we have John Adam, a US president, during this time in 1798. He came up with this act, Alien and Sedition Act, whereby he wanted the immigrants to wait for 14 years rather than 5 years, of which in the previous years, this act in 1790, a person to become a resident of America, he was not supposed to give any notice. He was going to acquire a permanent residence in the United States if he or she waits for only 2 years. That is in 1790, right? But in 1795 again, as time progresses, someone who is an immigrant in America was supposed to wait for maybe to give a notice of maybe 3 years. Then he was going to become a permanent resident maybe after 5 years. In 1790, after how many years? After 2 years. So as you can see, as the act is being implemented each and every time, the number of years for someone to become a resident of America is what? Is increasing. 1790, 2 years. 1795 is now 5 years. Then in 1798 now, when John Adam was the president of America, someone had to wait for 14 years to become a permanent resident in the United States of America. What caused that? This act of sedition and Alien in June 18, 1798. We can go back to 1796. We can go back to 1796. In 1796, we can see, this is where we see the Federalist Party appoint John Adam as their candidate for the presidential election that was going to take place in 1796. So here we are saying appointment of John Adam. So we are seeing this way mark of 1798. What caused it to be like what it is, where we have Alien and Sedition Acts? We are seeing the appointment of John Adam by the Federalist Party, and he managed to win those elections in 1798, and he becomes the president. When he becomes the president, they are the ones who engineered and came up with this act. So if you look at this act, it was not only talking about the immigrants, it was also not giving freedom of speech to the American citizens, freedom of speech even to those Democrat parties. You can hear from what I'm going to read here, reasons for Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. Main reason, what prompted them to come up with this act is saying, the Federalists believed that Democratic and Republican criticism of Federalist policies was disloyal and feared that aliens living in USA would sympathize with French during a war. As a result, a Federalist-controlled Congress passed 4 laws known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Acts. So as you can see, they came up with this act as a way to silence the Democratic and what? And the Republican. Why? Because they thought that the Democratic and the Republicans, they are against their what? Their policies. So they had to put in place something which will silence their opponents. So by so doing, they make use of the Congress. You see, because they are the ones who were controlling the what? The Congress during this time. So the effect that we have been, it is being caused by the appointment of John Adams as the president of the United States of America when he was appointed by the Federalist Party. I don't know if that's clear. Any questions? Questions? Any questions? Right? So another thing that was in Alien and Sedition Act, we also see there was no freedom of speech. There was no freedom of speech. That's one. Two, we also see that the press of Democratic and Republicans was being silenced. Why? Because they thought that the Democratic and the Republicans, they are against their policies.
Simba, can I just clarify something?
Yes.
So that just to make it a bit simpler, because I was just trying to follow that Democrats Republicans. The Democratic Republican Party was one party.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Just
true.
wanted to clear that up. And the Federalists were the other side. So would we say, so the Federalists were pro, big government, and the others were for state rights. So they were afraid that the states would get powerful.
Exactly.
So they were
That's
fighting
true.
against each other. Is that the okay?
Exactly. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah. So this is the reason why I'm taking June 18, 1798 to be specific on June 18. Remember, we marked 1798. So as we can see, remember Ellen White in 1850, she's highlighting that there's going to be the manifestation of power by the third angel's message, whereby the speaking of the nation is done by the legislative and the judicial. But as you can see in 1798, you can see part of the judicial of the legislative doing its activities, which shows that if the Millerites were studying correctly, they were going to identify that there is danger. There is danger. It's very sad that they did not take into account, or they did not consider the external events during their time. This is 1798, which is this way, whereby we have the cause and its effect. Now, want to move on to questions? Someone is talking. All right. Then want to move on to the second Weimar of 1840. Remember, we have studies by Elder Chess, and we managed to have a good revision. I must appreciate by Katie. Should be last week. It should be last week, whereby we're looking at the cause and effect that each and every Weimar, it is a point, of course, but what you need to understand is we are supposed to look back at the certain events that lead to that waymark to be where it is. So if we look at 1840, in the year 1840, what is it that the Millerites did not take into account that which took place external? Question to the class. In 1840. Blessing or charity?
Was it to do with the elections?
Yes, thank you very much. Elections. Elections. These are some of the external events that they did not take into account. Yes, elections. Yeah. If you may remember, which part won the election?
I think it's
Which
the
part
Whigs.
won the election in 1840? Leon? Leon? Or someone else who is Curtis?
I think someone had given an answer. I'm not
In
sure
the
who.
chat.
You may not have heard them. No, not in the chat. They unmuted
Yeah,
and stuff.
it was me. I had said I think it's the Whigs.
Oh, thank you very much, Blessing. I didn't hear it. Why?
No, it's okay. I think we spoke at the same time.
All right. Weak part, thank you. Here we have weak part. And the one who became the president, we have Henry, William Henry becomes the president of the United States of America. What could be the cause? Remember, this is the effect. What could be the cause of this outcome of election? Who wants to try? What could be the cause? What could be the cause? What could be the cause? Ignatius, what could be the cause? What could be the cause? If Ignatius is not around, Emma, what could be the cause?
I'm not sure, to be honest. It seems that that's the first or only the second time they've won. I know this was unusual that they won. But was it the second time? Someone get shot. I know Natalie says someone got shot. I'm not sure if someone got shot. I know there's a lot going on with the states and the rights of to do with slavery, but also to do with what's the word when they're trying to add states to the United States?
Basically, we don't know.
But I'm not sure. Yeah.
Right, fine, thank you. Who else wants to try? Just give it a try. Curtis, don't you want to try?
No, thank you.
All right. So I'll go to December 4. I think this is a clue. To December 8, 1839. It's a clue. December 4 up to 8, 1839.
I guess what
Yeah.
happens on December 4 is the electoral college vote.
All right.
No, it's a national convention of the Whig Party.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I cheated.
That is the first national convention for the Whig Party. Yeah. That is the first national convention. First national convention for Whig Party. For Whig Party. And they appointed William Henry Harrison. So that is the cause.
Sorry, Simba, please remind
Yes.
me in 1840 where you mark this effect. I I forgot, sorry, what you said. Was that Henry wins the nominee or he won the presidency? What happens there?
All right. In December 4th, from December 4 to December 8, William Henry Harrison was appointed to become the representative, a presidential candidate for the Whig Party, right? When he became the presidential candidate for the Whig Party, he contested in 1840. You see, the following year,
Okay.
and he becomes the president of America. So we are saying, as this event or as these events are unfolding in America, the Millerites, as the student of the prophet, they are supposed to see these external events. Remember, they managed to predict the fall of the Ottoman Empire, right? But remember, in their country, the elections were taking place, and they were not even taking into account what was taking place in their country, you see. Which is something which I think, if they stick to the external events like what we are doing, their history was going to be the history of success, and Christ was going to come in 1863. So we have looked at 1840. I do understand that we have two waymarks in each dispensation, right? Which is the increase of knowledge and the formalization. But Melania is saying the green one is not clear. Use this one again. So for the meantime, where can I put it? Let me erase this part.
Simba,
Hello?
with the Millerites, if they'd have been watching the election 1840, 39, how would that have shown them that the Sunday law was going to be set into Congress? Leave that goes to anybody, thanks. Because I understand it would have shown the Fugitive Slave Act maybe coming, but how would looking externally would they have seen Sunday law being in Congress with this Whig party in 1839? Anybody?
All right. Do you have anyone who wants to respond?
I can try.
All right, you can. After you, then Melania, then maybe I can say something.
I guess from where you started in 1798 in bringing out the issues to do with what you brought out in that era as well, the Fugitive Slave Act was on the books already. And so essentially, if the Millerites had been cognizant of attaching that story of slavery issues in their history and attaching that to prophecy, they could have seen that connection, that something was coming, that this is a story about the human rights in their history. It wasn't just about God coming, it was also about these human rights that were being fought for in the United States. And so they I guess could have put two and two together, that the great test, if I were to put it in inverted commas, the thing that was going to bring everything to its climax was going to be surrounded by this big subject that was being agitated in their line, if I can call it that. Not sure if that helps answer your question, Natalie.
Thank you, Curtis. Melania?
Yeah, it's more like what Curtis has said. I just need to add on. Like I think the whole issue started in 1798. The prediction that William Miller said that Christ was going to come on earth. I think that's where they lost it altogether in the first place. Because whatever they were doing, they were not concerned about what was happening in the world. You see, their concern was just saying Christ is coming on earth and we need to prepare. So we don't mind what is happening in this world. We don't mind what the politics of the world is. We don't mind everything that is happening around us. So their focus was just on the religious aspect. Christ is coming. We need to prepare ourselves spiritually. So they didn't mind. And the other thing is they did not pay much attention. If they paid attention on the external events, on what was happening in their society in the first place, it was going to help them to see that their Sunday law is all about slavery, something that was being agitated in the society at that time. So if you look at all the Sunday laws, the testing issues are always issues that are being said in society, that are dividing the society into classes. So I think that's where they lost the whole thing in the first place.
Anyone else?
Simba, I have a question.
Yes.
I actually agree with what Melania said. So my question is, did the Millerites get the definition of preparation wrong? You know, like, because the idea that Christ is coming, we should prepare is a truth, but what does it mean to prepare? Because
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's preparing, isolating from the world, where it's actually understanding the issues that affect us. Yeah.
What I think, Blessing, in another words, they were nationalistic, the Millerites. That's what I can see.
Sorry, how can you relate that to Blessing's question? I don't understand the connection between what you said and Blessing's question.
Oh, Blessing, if I got him correct, he's saying it seems like they were preparing for the second coming, right? So it's their understanding of the preparation. It seems like they did not understand their the preparation of the second coming.
Yeah, in essence, my question is about how we define preparation, what preparation is.
Get this? Or to you?
And then you said the Millerites were nationalistic. So yeah, I'm just trying to understand how that's an answer to that question. Like,
all right. Wait, the way they were preparing, for the second advent, they were looking unto themselves only. They were not taking into account others.
You mean like they thought they were special?
Exactly.
Actually, some of them, they actually kept slaves during this particular time. They had slaves, and it's one of the reasons why William Foy was scared to take up the message after the disappointment, because he was black, and his fears were, are these people going to accept a message that's coming from a black man? Because in terms of their attitude, it was not a correct attitude regarding other people. They were looking at themselves like what Natalie has just said, looking at themselves only and not looking at other people. So in terms of their preparation, it was it augured well with fallen Protestantism, the same way that maybe an Adventist would say, we need to prepare, Jesus is coming soon, we need to prepare. I think that's the same kind of preparation that these fellows were actually thinking of, or that's what they meant when they said, let's prepare our hearts to meet the Lord. ignoring the sin that they were supposed to repent of and make preparation during that time.
Thank you. Someone else?
I'm not sure quite what Ignatius just said. I just wanted to clarify what you were saying about when you called them nationalistic. Were you saying that they are internal focused? They're all about themselves. Ignatius seemed to pick up on that point. But I'm saying, okay, I don't know if that's wholly true, because they were writing anti-slavery tracts. If we're going to talk about them not being interested in what's going on around them, I think they were banned from the South because they were distributing so many anti-slavery tracts, and James White was calling for people to vote for Abraham Lincoln. It's because they had an anti-slavery stance in the movement. I don't know about individual Adventists having slaves, but as a group, they were certainly standing up against slavery, and that's was always been my question about what weren't they passing in 1850? What were they doing wrong? And I think that's kind of what you're asking in a way. I know there's some things in the chat.
Yeah. Curtis was saying their whole message was centered around the religious aspect. If they had paid more attention to the external issues, it may have had an impact on their internal message. And then Tom said, what precedents did they have to connect an externally agitated topic to their Sunday law? We can look back to the Millerite history, but where would they have looked to? And Curtis said, yeah, we make it sound easier than it actually was to do that.
Why would they look externally with Lich, but they wouldn't look externally with anything else? And that's to Tom. But I see what Tom's saying for sure. So would we say we had that the prophet just didn't lead them in the right direction? Because they were looking externally with Lich. What was wrong? Why couldn't they continue to do that? It was such a significant event.
Curtis has put because they had a time prophecy to do so.
So that was the time prophecy of Revelation, wasn't it? That's why they did Lich did the prediction, because it was a biblical prophecy.
Why couldn't they see that we put internal and external events? Because that was the beginning.
Simba?
Yes, Blessing?
I have a contribution about the Millerites identifying the political issues. Based on my understanding, of course, I could be wrong, but in 1844, prophecy pointed them in the direction of understanding the fall of Babylon. And it seems like the Millerites had an overemphasis on time, because time had been the first angel's message. That had been their test. In the second angel's message, even though time was a component of it, October 22, 1844, what was the focus of the message was the fall of Babylon and what that constituted. So Elder Tess speaks about how the fall of the Protestant churches was over the issue of slavery, because that's where you have the split of the three major denominations in the United States. And in their message, at least, the Millerites didn't seem to make that connection. So they focused on how, we've accepted time. The Protestants have rejected time. So they're Babylon, they're fallen, and they sort of ended it there and then focused on what Miller had said, which is Jesus is coming. But if they had understood, I guess if the messenger himself, Samuel Snow, the second angel, had actually understood the theme of his message, the fall of Babylon, and what that constituted, it would have, like Curtis said, shaped their message going forward and their experience, because after the disappointment of 1844, they never recovered from that because they had been so fixated on the issue of time.
Thank you, Blessing. All right.
I just ask a question on that.
All right, you can go on.
Yeah, thanks for your answer, Blessing. But by that time, I'm not entirely sure when, but in the 1840s, I think, mid to late 1840s, Ellen White already started writing about she might have called it, she didn't call it the sins of Babylon, but identifying Babylon as being the Catholic, Catholicism. and identifying the distinguishing markers of Babylon being Sunday sacredness and immortality of the soul. So it's kind of like the guide who's been raised up for them is telling them about things which are not really external, so like the Sunday sacredness and immortality of the soul. I think she talked in Spiritual Gifts Volume 1, she talks about that before even talking about slavery in the sins of Babylon. Like a couple of chapters before, she talks about that. So I'm just wondering how they would then use the second angel message that you're saying, identifying Babylon and why Babylon is fallen as being. I think by that time, at least it might seem like she was identifying the fall of Babylon being like Sunday sacredness and immortality of the soul. So she says that she even said Babylon has already been fallen. It's these other churches who are kind of joining by hanging on to Sunday sacredness.
Okay. Well, firstly, Tom, I think Illinois didn't write anything in the 1840s, like the early 1840s at least. Because when I talk about the second angel, that was in 1844. And by the time you get to October, the Millerites had already failed. Ellen White became a prophet after October. I think it's in December that she got her first vision. And then in relation to the sins of Babylon, the chapter itself called Sins of Babylon addresses slavery in spiritual gifts. So I'm not denying that Ellen White spoke a lot about Sunday sacredness and spiritualism, but I'm just saying she did identify the sin of slavery as the sins of Babylon in her early writings. Then an additional point is, I think we have gone through studies that have shown us that in the Millerite history, all three angels have problems. The first angel has a problem, the second angel has a problem, and the third angel, Ellen White, also had a problem. And when I say problem, it's not that she was in rebellion per se, but that there were certain issues that related to how she would deliver a message, one of them being her gender. She strongly believed that she was affected by her environment, and women didn't participate in the political process as much. You had the feminist movement. She wasn't really a part of that, first wave feminism. And she spoke a lot, like you say, about, she spoke vaguely about politics and more detailed about religious issues. So that's more of a consequence of the environment she lived in. But the Millerites as a movement, and particularly Samuel Snow as the messenger, could have and should have identified the slavery issue that was splitting the churches as part of the prophetic story in 1844. And he failed to do that.
Okay, that makes more sense if you're talking like, yeah, kind of around 1844, pre-1844. Yeah, thanks for the
Okay,
answer.
that's what I had said, though. Maybe you didn't hear.
Sorry, I'm my fault. I must have missed it.
No worries.
All right. We're looking at the 1840 election. So we're specifically looking at this waymark, but it's not specifically August 11, but we managed to look at the year 1840. The election took place in America. We looked at the cause. Yeah, looked at the cause. And we managed to come up with an effect. But what I want us to see is, as these events are unfolding, you can see that in America, there is a war, but it's cold. There are different ideologies which are existing within America. So in the event that truly they were looking at what was going on externally, they were going to be on the right side of the issue. Now, our next waymark on the bigger line is 1850, which is the Sunday law, where we have September 18. Can put September 18. September 18, 1850. September 18, 1850. This is where we have fugitive slave act law, right? But we all know that between 1840 and 1850, we are supposed to have two waymarks. I have managed to come up with the line for the priest for the Millerites here. We have 1798, August 11, 1840, 21 July 1844, 22 October 1844. Remember, this is 2001. I want us to see something. This is 2001. There's a point that I want to write home. This is 2001. This is 1989, right? And this is 2014. And this is 2019. In fact, let me put the other way marks below. Right. I'm saying 1989 here. We have 2001 here. Then this is 2014. And this is 2019. And we have 2021. We all know that 2019, this is the last year. Then in 2021, it becomes annual. Right? Then, if we go back to the bigger line, we have August 11, 1840, and the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 on the bigger line. Now, in this dispensation, we are supposed to have increase of knowledge and formalization. If we are to put, let's say, Raffia, Paniam here, because we are dealing with the Millerites, which is the history of failure, it becomes complicated. Why? Because if we look at the line of the priest, Paniam, which is 1850. At the same time, 1850 is the what? Is the Sunday law. So what am I trying to say? I want to justify the point that the next waymark that I look at in between, I just take 1844 alone. I don't know if that is clear. Without an exact date. I just take 1844. So 1844 in December of 1844. What do we have when you have managed to identify what happened in 1840? Definitely in 1844, you're supposed to know what happened December 1844.
I believe there was an election in 1844.
Of course, that is true, because after 4 years, from 1840 to 1844, we have been in an election.
So,
And who wins this election, if you remember?
James
I
Polk.
think, yeah.
Thank you, Kerry. Right? Here's the election. Right? Can someone try to identify, because this is the effect, yeah? This is the effect, right? Then what about the cause? Something that took place prior to December 1844. Which caused James Polk to win the election?
So I'm gonna make a comment.
Yes.
And I appreciate, that last week I went through similar steps. But my comment is in relation to these cause and effect relationships is I don't know how else to frame this, but you've
No
pointed
worries.
out that James Polk has the effect is James Polk being elected. You could look to any event prior to that as being the cause. You could look to the election day as being the cause. You could look to the National Convention as being the cause. You could look to several items as being the cause that brings that effect. So how can we be certain that a specific thing, whatever it is you're going to point out, as with all the others that you pointed out, are the two things that are related? Like it is that one and not any of the other things that could be the cause. I don't know if my question makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. All right. To respond to that, do we have anyone who wants to respond to Katie's question? All right. Let me go here. This is 1844.
Blessing wrote something in the chat, which I kind of suspected would have been the answer. And is that
Curtis, it's Charity.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. My bad. I apologize, Charity. Charity wrote in the chat, it depends on your story, which I kind of expected that to be an answer to my question. I guess what I'm coming from as a layer deeper to that is like what can we ground our stories in to ensure that we're not just telling a random story?
I think from what I was trying to do here, I was just trying to focus much on the events that triggered a certain event. For instance, if you look back, maybe here, the aspect of 1839, you would find that it's not, we don't have any other events that would have resulted maybe in the appointment of William Henry Harrison without the National Convention for the Whig Party, which took place during this time. From the research that I was doing, you could see there are certain journals whereby the journalists during that time were saying this event is the one that triggered this. If you look, we have some events whereby we had election, but I did not take into account even the National Convention of certain parts. I could even ignore. But for instance, in this case, we are not going to, of course, the National Convention was done in 1844. But the appointment of James Polk, you will see that something triggered, which caused James Polk to be appointed and becomes the what? Becomes the presidential, the president for United States of America in 1844. For example, let me just give give you this point. Let me read this point to you. This is the one that I was looking for from the article that I was reading. I'm almost there. Be patient with me. Right. Here, I'm going to read the thing. In 1844, there was a US presidential election. It started off with multiple, sorry, Patient, please. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's saying, yeah. In 1844, another election took place in both parties, Democratic Party and the Whig Party, held their conventions. Henry Clay was unanimously nominated to run for president, and they chose Theodore to run for vice president. Theodore was a strict Protestant, so they chose him to balance Clay, who was not. The Democrats, on the other hand, had a hard time nominating Martin Van Buren. As we have seen, it lost his support. After several votes, James K. Polk was nominated to run for president, and George M. Dallas for vice president. John Taylor, the current president, created his own party. This is where our issue is now. The Democratic Republican Party, which nominated him to run for president. He said that he was only running to get support for Polk. So in August, he dropped out of the race, and his supporters went over to Polk. There was also another party in that election, the Liberty Party. They were strong abolitionists, and they nominated James to run for president. The Whigs thought they would win like in 1840, but while Clay didn't want slavery to expand, he was unstable in his views of annexation of Texas and what he thought of slavery. The Democrats attacked him for this. Polk was clear that he wanted Texas and all Oregon for the Northerners. He believed in expanding the United States. These views were popular. The election took place from early November to early December 1844. James K. Polk won both the popular and electoral vote because of Henry Kelly's position on slavery. Some abolitionists voted for James Bean. Enough people voted for Bean in 2 states, which allowed Polk to win them. If Henry Clay had won one of those states, he would have won the election. That did not happen. So Democrat James K. Polk became 11th US president. So from what we have been reading, you can see that we have 2 aspects. One, Henry Clay was a compromiser. Number 2, we have John Taylor. John Taylor contested in this election as a way of trying to campaign for James Polk. So if you look what caused James Polk to become the president, we have 2 aspects: John Taylor effect, and because remember, John Taylor dropped off from contesting. You see, that was a very big mark to James Polk, because all the supporters for John Taylor went on to vote for Polk. Then, though we have Henry Clay with his weaknesses, also resulted in James Polk being become the president of America in 1844. I don't know if that is clear, Curtis.
Thank you for giving me that history.
Anyone else? So we are saying because what caused James Polk to win. I'm about to finish my start. John Taylor dropped. John Taylor dropped off from Conte. Right? And this happened August 1844. So this caused James Polk to gather more people who would vote for him in December 1844 after he dropped to run. So this is just 1844 without a specific date or whatever date that we may put. Then last part, then I will give the floor to the class. Then we can end our lesson. How many minutes left, Debbie?
You're,
Sorry?
you've done more than an hour. It's
Oh.
12:10, so.
All right, all right.
I mean, how long do you need?
Maybe 5 minutes, it's okay.
Yes, okay, all right.
Thank you very much. I think we can finish on 1850, whereby we will be looking at 1850, which is the Fugitive Slave Act. On this one, it was put into effect on the 18th of September, 1850. And we have two main points that caused the enactment of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1857, September 18. Number one, we have Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor won the election in 1848. He became the president in 1848. Zachary Taylor had participated in the American-Mexican War as a general. And then he managed to contest as a president, as a presidential candidate in 1848. And he becomes the president of America. That is point of, and he was also the slave owner. He used to own slaves. And at the same time, he was also the president, you see? So you can clearly see that there was no way in which a fugitive slave law is not going to be enacted when the president is having slaves. In as much as Zachary Taylor was saying slavery is bad, how can you say slavery is bad when you own slaves and you are the president of the what? Of the country, which is saying we are not supposed, which is divided about the issue of what? Of slavery. Point number one. Zachary Taylor spent about only 6 months in power. Then he died. When he died, his vice president comes to become, he becomes the president, who is I forgot the name, it's Millard Fillmore, becomes the president. And he's the one who managed to come up with the 1850 compromise. This is where we see the Fugitive Slave Act being coming into effect by Millard Fillmore in 1840. So here the cause is 1840. So we can mark the presidential election being won by Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor, right? And he owned slaves. Then later on, Zachary Taylor is a slave owner and he dies, right? Then the effect now, you will see Millard Fillmore put into effect the compromise of 1850. So the main thrust of this study, it was just to show what the Millerites were supposed to do so that Christ could have come during their time. So I am suggesting that in the event that the Millerites looked at these external events, they were going to be in a better position to be on the right side of the issue. Because during this time, God is not shape about slavery, but they did not look at that. So we are privileged that today we are able to look at what is taking place externally. And at the same time, we are also looking what is taking place internally, which makes our history to be the history of what? The history of success, unlike to that of the Millerites. This is the end of my study. Anyone with any additions or subtractions, it's your time. Additions or subtractions?
It's just a small note about the fact that Fillmore was a Whig, which I guess to put it into our context would be the equivalent of a Democrat today. And he was in office during their Sunday law. So understanding that it was a compromise by the Whigs, the executive branch was still held by a Whig and not necessarily by today's equivalent of a Republican. And I think that's important to note when we take into context that that was a history of failure. Yeah, just that.
Anyone else?
Simba, can I just read something out that Brian's put in the chat? Brian's put, before the presentation ends, I would wish that someone explained what we should learn from the Millerite movement history at that time regarding our present situation, firstly, as a movement and externally, generally.
Thank you.
May I may I just comment? Yeah, I think Simba kind of tied it up right at the end with his last few sentences about why the Millerite history was a failure at that time, because they did not acknowledge that slavery was not a good thing, that was externally, and I can't remember what he said about internally. Thanks.
Okay.
So yeah, the thought just came back to me. In our time, in relation to our time, in our time where we have these issues on equality, and as we can see, the world has a great divide on equality in all its forms. And we are going through the same thing. So internally, we have to recognize that we have to choose a side whom to stand with throughout this period till Christ comes. So we have a great responsibility for our own future and whatever is to come. Thank you.
You're welcome. And another thing that's which just came into my mind is I do understand, I stand to be corrected, that Ellen White lived both in the Millerite history and also in the 1888 history. If you look at those quotations like Great Controversy 442, paragraph 1, whereby she was saying the act of the judiciary and the legislative, but it doesn't apply to the Millerite because we are starting to see this is around 1888. This is 1888, so it does not fit well during this period because we had already passed. But still, even if you are to look during a time of 1888 history, still the church did not take into account external events, regardless of the fact that she was writing those aspects. They were not looking at some of the events, although we have those guys, they tried to fight these issues with the courts, but still the church rejected the 1888 what history, but still the church rejected. You see? Anyone else before you pray?
All right. I think there's one part that we need to clarify as you end your study, Simba. The fact that Ellen White speaks about slavery and that the Millerites were actually abolitionists. They were opposed institutionally. As an institution, the Millerites were opposed to the institution of slavery, right? And yet, when we get to 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act is passed into law, they fail to recognize that this issue of slavery is actually the testing issue. In prior discussions, we have already pointed out that in as much as they did fight against slavery, they were too obsessed with time such that they could not, properly knit together what is happening externally as it is related to their issue of the second advent of Christ, hence the failure. So they were involved with what was happening in the society, right? But they could not knit it with their message to connect it to the second advent of Christ, hence the failure. You see, so it's quite incorrect then to say that they did not recognize that slavery was wrong as an institution, though there are sources that point that there were some members who still kept slaves, even though as an institution they were against the issue of, they were abolitionists in essence.
Ignatius, and then you can pray. Let us pray. Dear God in heaven, we want to thank you for giving us this time, and to thank you for the lesson that we had this afternoon. May you bless each and every one of us as we are about to go for our lunch. We thank you for being with us. This is our humble prayer in Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Over to you, Debbie.